there was a horse that was extremely emaciated. She was in Texas, and we got a call from somebody that knew about our work who had driven past a property where this horse was just tied. And I mean, when I say emaciated, she was skin and bones, this little buckskin. I get this call from a stranger and still don't understand how they got my personal number, but glad they did. They described this horse, and I'm here in Los Angeles with my husband, and I get a photo, and it's just like, oh my God, what do we do? And so I got in touch with local law enforcement, and they ended up taking the horse away, and they allowed us to have the first right to figure out an adopter for the horse. So we took her under our care, and we paired her with this young woman who had undergone some personal abuse and was a teenager. The transformation and the photos from day one between those two, and this little girl, like her, her physicality was just so locked up. I don't know if that little girl would be around today without the help of that horse. Just a story of profound healing between two people that underwent abuse and found healing in each other. And that's the power of rescuing one life.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang.
So I'm here today with Ashley Avis, and some of you guys may know her from Disney's Black Beauty. Maybe you can give us a quick introduction and talk about Black Beauty, and is that kind of where your story starts with the work you're doing now?
It certainly did. Thank you for having me on the show today. Black Beauty, like so many people, I grew up with that novel as a kid, and it inspired my love of horses. Reading Black Beauty is what prompted me to ask my parents for riding lessons when I was 7 years old, and it really unexpectedly shaped my life. And as I embarked on my journey as a journalist, and then as a screenwriter, and eventually as a director, I had directed 3 films prior to Black Beauty, but that was the big entrance into a larger film, a larger budget, a much bigger crew. We shot the movie in South Africa. It's set in the United States, but for a number of reasons, mostly budget and tax credits, we shot in South Africa, which doubled beautifully for the Western US. But having grown up with horses most of my life, after I went to college and started my working career, horses dropped away, and they came back full force after I was approached to write and direct a reimagining. And so in being tasked with bringing the Black Beauty story into a modern world today, the last thing I wanted to do was change the Black Beauty story in a way that Anna Sewell would. It's just so easy to just rip off a valuable piece of intellectual property and turn it into something that has nothing to do with the spirit of the original, to be frank. And so I went back into why Anna Sewell wrote Black Beauty, and few people know that she was crippled as a little girl and she was carried by horses, and that inspired her very unique love and her understanding of them in a time when a lot of humans looked at horses as tools to carry things, to pull the cart, to plow the field. And
Absolutely.
and she revolutionized our understanding of horse and animal empathy, taking a great risk and publishing a book from the first person perspective of a horse. And it was in the research to see how we could honor Anna and why she wrote Black Beauty that I came across the issue wild horses were facing. And as a horse person in my youth, I had no idea. And then that spiraled into a life of its own with our doc and our other work today.
Is that why you picked the Mustang? Because they are the horse who is, I would say, targeted a good bit in the world today?
Completely. And I looked at a number of different issues and how we could frame the Black Beauty story, which is very episodic. It was a challenging film, and the version done in the 90s is still one of my favorite movies of all time, and so beautifully captures the period piece and the original literal interpretation of Anna Sewell's text. But as I started researching the wild horse issue back in, this would have been 2017, I was just so angry and so appalled. And, videos of the roundups, I knew just as a filmmaker, that's not doing what is happening justice. I need to go see that. And it was in collecting footage independently because the production didn't originally have the funds to send us out into the wild. Our film was an acquisition by Disney. It was not created by Disney. Some people don't quite understand that correlation. We didn't have the Disney budget on Black
Yeah.
Beauty.
So what is the difference between that and one that Disney's
It
fully
fit
behind, I guess?
Sure. Yeah. It was produced by a wonderful company called Constantine Film, and they championed it and took the risk to fully finance Black Beauty. And then when I was editing the film, Disney called and they said, "We'd like to see this." And I'll never forget, because I edit most of my own work, and taking on a film of that scale was a whole nother story
A
of
lot.
pressure. But yeah, in addition to the responsibility of trying to tell a classic story. And so I'll never forget the Disney executive flying to Germany, where I was editing and living for 4 months. And he sat behind me quietly as I played 30 minutes of the film, different scenes that I had cut. They were out of order. And one of the first scenes that I cut, and I really wanted him to see, was the evolution of Black Beauty as a wild horse and having freedom and family taken away, because I really wanted to clock whether that storyline, not that I had much say in it, but at that juncture when, you're getting to that level. No, I did. I'm going to take that back. I'm very vocal. But Disney was an amazing partner. And what was incredible, you go through a movie and you have so many different people with different opinions and notes, and you hope as a filmmaker that you work with people that are walking in the same direction as to why you created something. And I was so lucky that our producers understood what the messaging was, what we could do for the world with that film. And Disney really, they had so many notes, but they didn't actually have any notes or any cut downs to the roundup scenes, which was incredible. And those are really, powerful scenes, emotional scenes, particularly for families. And we were able to keep the full punch, including Beauty rearing up and banging her hooves on the BLM sign. I'll never forget sitting with our design team to create that. It was a lot bigger on set than I realized it was until we actually got to set that day. It was huge, and Beauty reared up and nailed that. And we have a commentary about strike horses, and all of that was preserved, which was very powerful.
So you guys basically took the risk creating this movie, and I wouldn't say by chance, but thankfully Disney picked it up and made it this huge, huge movie. But when you guys started, you had no idea that that was the platform you guys would have.
Had no idea. Wouldn't have even dreamed that was possible. And it came out Thanksgiving Day 2020. They put a ton of marketing behind it. I mean, we were sitting there with my family. It was COVID. Spent a lot of time with family and seeing commercials on TV for forget what huge sports event was going on at the time, but there it was. And it was just completely surreal. And then over the holidays and over Christmas, getting these messages from children and families and adults. The film performed equally amongst the four quadrants of kids, families, young adults. It was amazing how it seemed to resonate with everybody, and getting so many messages of hope. And one young woman said, "I understand now. My horse just passed away. I understand where horses go now because of Black Beauty," talking about her mother's watching over her from her bed in the stars. That young woman is now a mentee of mine today. And the response was astounding, and it cast a light on the wild horse issue. And it really pointed me in the direction of the films that I'm pursuing today.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it is amazing how many people still don't know about it. I was a bit like you, where I had horses growing up, got away from them as I went to college, had kids. And then I didn't know anything about Mustangs really when I saw mine. And then I started kind of researching it. So even people who are in the horse world don't necessarily know the situation with Mustangs and what's happening with them. So
Yeah.
how amazing to shine that light on it for so many people that are going to watch a family movie.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So Black Beauty comes out. It's a huge movie, a huge success. What is next for you?
Well, so around Black Beauty, and it was prior to the film's production that we raised a little bit of money to go out into the wild and capture footage of wild horses. That was 2018, 2019, those first trips. And getting to see wild horses where they belong on the range was just, I wish for everyone that they could experience that. And that's why we called it Wild Beauty. And then seeing our first roundups in person and just immediately, I mean, you know, most people are who attend roundups are cognizant of what the BLM is doing to, reduce visibility, put you behind a rock. But throughout the production of Wild Beauty, as they became more conscious of what we were doing, the more they kind of messed with us. But I'll never forget my first roundup, which was Triple B in 2019, and sitting on the mountain 3 miles away, in a space where it was 100 degrees and they wouldn't let us put up an umbrella. I'd later realized that roundup shouldn't have been happening at that level of heat. And I turned to my husband and I said, how is there not a blackfish for wild horses? How is this not a documentary that dives into the real issue at hand here? And so we knew at that point, and we weren't documentarians. I mean, we're narrative filmmakers, but I wanted to bring that sensibility to the doc because it's obviously so crucial for people to need to know and to emotionally invest. In a narrative film, you're always trying to immediately, within the first 10 pages of the screenplay, if you want to like the hero or the heroine, you need to understand their plight, their individual plight. And once you connect with them, you're rooting for them and you're rooting for what they believe in. And I wanted to bring that sensibility into Wild Beauty. And obviously, in Black Beauty, we had over 50 equine actors. And in Wild Beauty, you're documenting what you're documenting. And we just hoped that certain horses, certain herds would kind of come forth to become those individuals that we could spotlight. And that's what so beautifully happened. And it was the Aniki herd that we really spent a lot of time with over the years and fell in love with, and just had these amazing days where, they moving toward water at dawn and dusk. And we just got these unbelievable shots. We had at one point 2 stallions fighting, and we were just in the middle of the field and we stood there and they started sparring right in front of us. And we just captured that. And it just felt like a nod from fate, or we don't know how the universe works, but it felt like, keep going. This is right. Please keep going. And it was hard. I mean, anybody who has been to the roundups or has watched the videos knows how awful this is. But we were very proud of the film. It was nominated for a Critics' Choice Award, and we've screened in Congress 5 times now. We brought a wild horse to the Warner Theater in DC in 2022. Cars were honking and we made a spectacle out of it. And Congresswoman Dina Titus and Steve Cohen, they came out and took pictures and have been so supportive and are such champions. And so it's parlayed into the films that I'm working on now, one of which is called American Wolf, with Leonardo DiCaprio producing, which is a beautiful, very hard-hitting narrative film about the reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone and the delisting. The story is set primarily between 2009 and 2012. So I've been doing a deep dive over the past 2 years into the world of wolves and understanding the multi-generational politics and mythology and all of the things that go into that, and the parallels between wolves and wild horses. And then there's no horse in this one, but I'm working on a reimagining of City of Angels right now for Warner Brothers. That hopefully will be in production next year.
That's exciting. With documenting the wild horses, what were the goals that you really wanted to have happen with that?
Our goals really were to drive awareness and to make change. And we certainly drove a lot of awareness. I mean, it's just been beautiful and unexpected how taking on that issue, I never thought in a million years I'd ever be in DC lobbying Congress. And that's become a big part of my life now, is trying to, I feel like if you've got a platform, you're beholden to use it for your corner of the world. Sometimes you get the response of, what can my voice do? And it's everything. Your voice can do everything. And it's amazing, especially with young people. I love connecting with students and kids who are emboldened to make change. And we launched a letter writing campaign in 2021 called I Stand with Wild Horses, which is now taken on a life of its own on social media, which is incredible and kind of the point. But we initially launched that to encourage children to write letters on behalf of the Aniki horses to try to stop that roundup. And we still use that campaign today, where I've hand walked letters into Congress. Last year, I hand walked a stack of letters from foster children into now Senator Schiff's office before he was Congressman Schiff. And I asked his staffer, I said, if you read any of them, read the top one. And it was from a young woman who had lost her parents and missed her mom so much. And she had never met a horse before. And she came up to this amazing sanctuary in Topanga and Mindful Mustang. And I told her the muzzle is the best part. And she touched the muzzle of this formerly wild horse. And she, at the end of that day, she wrote this letter that would just break your heart in the first couple of sentences. And now Senator Schiff, he signed on to the helicopter bill, the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, within 3 days of handing those letters to his office. So it's like one voice makes a difference, and we are beholden, all of us, to use ours.
And I found that the stories are really one thing that helps a lot of people relate to the horses, because a lot of people have these really hard, difficult pasts where they've had losses or had trauma. A lot of the stories I've heard, they go in with these horses who have also been taken from their families, put in an environment they don't necessarily want to be in. And that really creates a powerful bond between the two to almost recognize there's another being who can maybe understand a bit of how I feel in my situation. So that storytelling, which is a huge part of what you do, is so powerful and so important in all of our lives.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing how they, regulate our nervous system and help us just relax. I mean, we were just earlier this week, we were filming with a wonderful nonprofit called Riding the Spectrum. And they had one of their students come out, and they work with children and teens and adults with autism. And this young woman came out, and it was amazing to see that transformation when she got on the horse. And frankly, we were having a stressful day with, real work as a filmmaker and just navigating some toughness on one of our projects. And, you try not to let anyone know you're stressed when you're trying to do something and film. But it was just amazing to just step onto their property. And within 15 minutes, just hugging on a horse, I was immediately so much calmer. And it's amazing the effect that they have on us and the gifts that they have. And we discussed on that day just the importance of second chapters. And they, are hopefully about to adopt this little former jumper that can't jump anymore, but can still do walk, trot, and lead line. And there's that great quote in Seabiscuit about, you don't throw a life away just because it's banged up a little. And that's such a beautiful and true thing. And that ties to the campaign that we're launching now called The Lost Horses, where we've decided to step into the ring along with another great many organizations that have been fighting for it to try to pass the SAFE Act.
Tell us a little bit more about that campaign and the work that you're doing there.
Sure. So an amazing person in my life, her name is Dr. Nancy O'Reilly. I've known her since the process of trying to lift Wild Beauty, our doc, off the ground. And she emailed me this in spring of this year. And she said, Ashley, I don't understand how this is happening. She was becoming more aware of the slaughter pipeline and just how bad that is, because even horse people a lot of people do not understand how bad that is and how many horses, and predominantly healthy horses. The ASPCA has some staggering statistics about how many it's primarily young horses under the age of 10 that
Wow.
are in the slaughter pipeline. And Dr. Nancy said, I've started rescuing, and how can we change this? So we discussed the SAFE Act, of course, and I said, give me a couple of days and let me think about it, because obviously it's a huge lift to try to meaningfully, because we've sent out the petitions and those have their place. And I encourage people it takes 2 seconds, sign on to it, send the letters to Congress. They do work. One voice times a million, as they say. And so I came back to Dr. Nancy and I said, if we were to try to do this, because our organization is very small. I mean, I run our social media and and now I fortunately have some help from some wonderful people, but we're still very small. And I said, if we were to tackle a way that we could help fit in, it would be a multi-pronged PSA campaign, because that's where we aid best, is the storytelling. Said multi-part PSA campaign. It would need to be coupled with lobbying efforts simultaneously and bi-coastal PR for the entertainment community, because we need megaphone voices and the world is on social media. We've got to get this out there, not just to the equestrian community, but to the country, to the world. And then we need to hit it hard in Washington, D.C. And it's a huge effort. But let's talk about this and if it's viable. And she gave the campaign its flight wings, and we went into production. We filmed for almost a month in July into August, capturing some beautiful content of all different types of horses: wild horses, jumpers, thoroughbreds, lesson ponies, and donkeys. And I ended up writing these 90-second vignettes that each dip into the life of a horse, an individual horse that can become lost. So it's the jumper that flies over fences and loves his girl, but his girl gets older and graduates to the next horse and finds the best home. And that home is great until that kid grows up. And then he's sold again and again. And the last person can't afford him. And he ends up on a trailer. And then he's standing there trembling in a feedlot, wondering where they all went. And so these short, emotional, cinematic vignettes. And we've approached a number of authentic equine loving celebrities to voice them. And so we debuted the first one yesterday with Dermot Mulroney. And then we debuted one 2 weeks ago, kind of our hero PSA with Olympian Jessica Springsteen. And Jess is voicing another one of the spots, the show jumper spots. So it's our way of trying to get people to pay attention through storytelling and then to drive them into anger, into sorrow, and also into hope and action, to click the button, make the call, send the message, and let's spend 2 minutes to protect wild horses and all horses.
And so, a bit of a summary for people who maybe aren't familiar. What happens a lot of times is people have a horse, they can't keep it, don't want to keep it for whatever reason. They may have found a home, or a lot of times they're sent to an auction, which is open to the public. Other people could potentially take that horse into their home. But a lot of times, and correct anything where I'm wrong, a lot of times what we term kill buyers will come in and take a lot of the horses that aren't getting bids, or, I mean, I don't know how they pick them, but Mustangs are especially vulnerable because a lot of times they're not trained or not trained well. So that's going to be a much bigger project for someone who, say, wants a horse to ride or to just enjoy. So the kill buyers come in, gather all these horses, and then horse slaughter is illegal in the United States. So they can't take it anywhere here. So they take it across the border to slaughterhouses there. Is that kind of the gist of what is happening right now?
It's a great summary. And it's a for-profit industry, obviously. I mean, these kill buyers, then, as a lot of people listening to this know, but some people don't. I mean, I didn't know about the kill pens until 2020 when I was sitting there in my living room during COVID editing Black Beauty under a towel because I was trying to block out the sun. And one Sunday I was on Facebook and this little gray mare popped up. She was a formerly wild horse in a kill pen. And I don't know what algorithm pointed me toward that, but that was another massive twist into fate. And it was rescuing her that I came to learn about the kill buyer situation, which is, everybody has a different opinion about whether to rescue from kill buyers. And a lot of opinions are warranted. It's awful. What they're doing and how they're extorting the public is disgusting. And, preying on emotions, preying on our hearts. But at the end of the day, and this is just my opinion, the horses are the ones caught in the middle of something very nasty. So we have done our, the rescue that we can as a small organization. We've rescued, I mean, we're at 60 or 70 horses at this point. And whether in partnerships or individual rescues, we just rescued 5 this summer when we went undercover in Texas again into another one of the, I won't mention the name of the auction because it's, unfortunately, now with our documentary, I'm not as anonymous as I once was, but we went in with, with button cams and we filmed content and we rescued a couple of horses during that trip. And all different types of horses. One of them was this beautiful thoroughbred who came in with multiple other thoroughbreds in her group. And she didn't have a tattoo, but she was so sweet and so clearly previously well cared for. And I wanted to get her scanned for a chip. We rescued her. We did. She is a thoroughbred off the track, 10 starts. She never placed and got dumped and perfectly healthy and beautiful and could be a jumper or a therapy horse, another chapter. And then we rescued 2 yearlings, one of which was so sick. And we were beyond our budget at this point on our last day. And I walked into this corral and this little black colt who reminded me so much of Black Beauty. It had a tiniest little star. And just his eyes were running and mucus. Obviously he had strangles and did have strangles. And he just came up to me and his eyes were like, it just, looked sleepy, but it was sick. And he put his head in my hands and I just held him and I just started crying. And the kill buyer wanted so much money for him. It was so disgusting. And I called him back the next day and I I said, can you just please do something that's reasonable? And we had adopted another horse from him. And I said, he's so sick. And he gave me a better price and we rescued him. And he and the other four horses just came from Texas to California on Monday and they're all great and they're healthy. And I sat in his, they're in quarantine, of course, again. But I sat with him until, night fell. And I wished I could bring a mattress or, a blanket and just sit with him all night. But Dr. Nancy, who is part of this campaign, she adopted all five of them. So a thoroughbred who's like, it's 16.3, and then two little quarter horse yearlings, a little donkey. She actually added on a horse, two minis who are both pregnant, just this ragtag bunch that finally got off the trailer. And it was just, again, one beautiful moments that really point to, the universe or something greater saying, keep going because every life matters. And that's so true.
Yeah. What a happy ending to a kind of horrible journey that they were able to come and find a home.
Yeah. 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 It's really, really special.
For people who may not know, when you talk about the kill buyers kind of manipulating the public or people who are interested in horses, a lot of times they'll buy the horses at auction and then they kind of have, a lot of times I've seen them on Facebook pages or through rescue organizations is where I see them a lot also, where they kind of say this horse is going to ship on Monday. We need this much to save them. And a lot of time the prices are probably above a lot of market value for a horse that has been at auction and maybe has different situations. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're pregnant, maybe they're not trained, and they kind of price them high. So people are doing this frantic fundraising, trying to save these horses to get them off this truck that's going to go to slaughter. So, and from what I understand, a lot of the times the horses are maybe never really intended to go to slaughter. Like the kill buyer's real intention is like, this is a horse we can probably get rescued.
Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true. There's one particular kill buyer that he's been very candid with me that he used to ship to slaughter and he doesn't anymore. So yeah, given that industry is so for profit and often twisted, it's hard to believe what you're hearing. But the reality is we're still seeing 20,000 horses. Some of them are being shipped. Some of them are, but 20,000 horses, from what I've been told by a major organization, just a few weeks ago, is it's trending up in 2025. It's likely that it's going to be around 25,000 horses this year. And it's been, been coming down for years. And now that we're seeing an upswing again, that is really, really troubling. The SAFE Act has been around for so long and so many great organizations are fighting for it. But what we identified was just, there's never been a major PSA initiative, not at the level of something really coupled with not only elevated storytelling, but just the power of public relations is so key to just get something out there. And social media is so powerful. So that's the vehicle that we're using. But we early on, we were like, to get this into the zeitgeist, you need that star power and some of these celebrities, stepping into the ring to fight for this. And in such a cancel culture sort of world today, so many people are afraid of standing with anything. But what's been beautiful, horse slaughter, it's pretty darn black and white. And, you understand what is going on. And most people say, that's wrong. How can I help?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the SAFE Act. Is it a new act? Is it an amendment to the current act that they're trying to currently push through and get approval for?
The SAFE Act has been around for well over a decade, and it would prohibit horses being shipped across our borders for human consumption. And it would finally close the loophole on the possibility of slaughterhouses for horses being reopened in the United States, because there's an annual rider, appropriations rider, that continues to block that. And the possibility of it opening is very real. So the SAFE Act would lock that up. And it's bipartisan. The last time I looked, I think I don't want to misquote, but it's over 180 co-sponsors, I believe, this year. And I'd be curious actually to know how many people have signed on since we launched the campaign. And a lot of, obviously that's not by any stretch just us. A lot of organizations are fighting for this, but we're definitely making some waves. We've been taking some congressional meetings over the past few weeks to talk to some of our champions who have been involved in the wild horse issue with us, who are co-sponsors of SAFE Act, and we're mounting a fly-in day next year in probably late February, early March, alongside a few other organizations that are very powerful, different breed associations as well. And we're going to do a coordinated effort in DC.
And so, from the things you've seen, things you've created, horse slaughter is no longer an option, because I feel like this is maybe what the adversary would say. Like, what would happen? What do you guys see the solutions being for those 20,000 horses who no longer are being shipped across the borders to slaughter? How can people help with that issue maybe also?
Certainly. Well, it's a misconception that there would be a horse crisis if the SAFE Act passed. It's just, you can no longer, if you don't want it, you can't put your horse on a trailer and say, I hope that horse goes to a good home. Or you might not know about slaughter at all. And so the ASPCA has some really illuminating statistics about 1.2 American households have an immediate desire and the ability to adopt a horse. So if you think about 1.2 million households, let's say, cut that in quarters or more, there will be homes for the horses. And when SAFE Act does, knock on wood, pass, that's going to be a time for all of the rescues and all of the sanctuaries around the country and frankly around the world. There's a lot of interest, particularly just knowing about wild horses, a lot of interest in Europe to save wild horses from the States and bring them overseas. Going to be, I think, the responsibility of everyone who has horses in their lives, whether you can take somebody in or not, to spread that word like wildfire. And let's make sure the horses that actually really need homes find those soft landings. And then let's stop this train, this easy way out when it is a case of overbreeding where you just don't want it. The conformation isn't right. Whatever the excuse, you don't get to put that horse or those 5 horses or those 20 horses onto a trailer and just say goodbye. I keep thinking about it like an overflowing tap in the bathtub. Enough. It has to be shut off. And of course, there will be duplicitous people and things will trickle through, and the world is not perfect. But this open door to letting them go has to close.
I think you're right. I think a lot of the issue does stem from the equine community, and that people who say they love horses only love them until they're not of use to them anymore. And one thing I thought when you were talking about the place where you just did some filming where they were helping kids with autism is that a lot of people think, a horse that's too old or can't perform how they were originally trained, or maybe even can't be ridden anymore, they're no longer useful. And I'm sure one thing that you saw is that, and one thing I believe and really want to promote, is one of the places they can be most useful is helping our community and society to be healthier in our minds and to be able to have the things we need to navigate in the world today that's pretty crazy sometimes. So I 100% agree that the equine community really needs to step up. If we say that we love these animals, it's time to, maybe start proving that they're not just something that we use and let go when they don't serve our purposes anymore.
1000%. And it's expensive to own a horse. And some people race into it and then realize, oh my gosh, I think there just needs to be more accountability there too. And for some people, yes, people fall on hard times and they can't take care of their horses. But instead of having a way out that could lead to the unimaginable death of that horse, there are resources out there. ASPCA and other organizations have links and resources to, you can get a grant for a little bit of, a little stopgap because there have been stats that those organizations have done too about sometimes it's just a matter of a month, or somebody has an injury or something happens and it's not, I don't need a gap for the year, but I can't do it this month. And there are places to go to ask for help. And then if you can't take care of the horse, there are places to go to ask for help. And the legwork needs to be done to make sure if you can't take care of the horse, it has to have a soft landing. And anyone who has a horse should have that plan put into place about what if the worst happens? Where is this animal going to go? It's just like our dogs. You don't look at an elderly dog if you love your pup and say, I'm going to ship you to, Korea and let you go to that unimaginable fate. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? So, and I challenge anybody to, because I've had a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of different conversations. Slaughter is not humane euthanasia. Slaughter is not euthanasia, period. And I challenge anybody who says, well, what are we going to do to do the legwork to figure that out? And if you still believe horses should go to auction, I challenge you to go down to Texas and sit in an auction, go to Bowie, go to Cleburne, go to Presidio, and watch those horses get on the trailer and look at you through the panels with their eyes and tell me that that's okay. And frankly, if you say that's okay, you don't have a soul. And that's pretty candid, but this has to stop.
Yeah. And I agree that part of the problem is it's an easy out for people and you don't have to see what happens to your horses after that, which is another great thing that I think you're doing is you really are bringing those visuals to life. Something that anyone who checks out some of the videos you've done for the Lost Horses campaign, you can see exactly that thing of what it's like for those horses going through that process from a home to someone who has left them at an auction and where they might end up and the situation they might be in. And a lot of that, I think, is the cruelty along the way, where, not to be blunt, but death can sometimes be an easier, more compassionate option, especially for, say the older horses that someone's done with may not be able to use anymore.
And for horses, when it's time, we think of our pups, our dogs, when it's time or they're hurting, or that's the time to go to a vet and allow that to be humane and graceful and compassionate. And again, this is, I believe, an ASPCA statistic. The euthanasia costs equate to something like the median board for a horse monthly. So if you've got a horse and you are responsible and you can afford it, saying that humane euthanasia is too costly is also not an acceptable excuse.
Yeah. As you've worked on these campaigns, have you received a lot of pushback? And I especially think with the wild horses, it's a very divisive area where there are really strong opinions on both sides, and it's hard to sometimes find a middle ground. How has that been kind of diving into these areas where some people are very passionate, both sides?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. When we started the documentary, we initially thought it was going to be kind of an indie Planet Earth for wild horses, where we would have a celebrity narrator and it would be a little bit more above the issue versus, ever getting personal. And it was through the years of filming and going to the roundups and just seeing the injustice and seeing the lies from the Bureau of Land Management and duplicity from the contractors that we got bolder. And my background is as a journalist, and that kind of came back full force as that continued to unfold. And then the film, as I was editing it, I remember the day that I realized, oh my gosh, I was writing the voiceover for somebody else. And then I started putting in our behind the scenes footage. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be different than I got. And I was editing while we were wrapping up our last filming, which was up in Colorado with San Wash Basin during that roundup, and then I went down to Texas, the first trip to Texas undercover, and then that changed everything. That trip changed everything because we didn't have a cinematographer with us. It was too dangerous. You can't bring massive film camera that's bigger than my half of my body.
They would not like to see that. You probably would not be welcome.
No, no, no. We had some strong words from Bowie in this last trip when we walked in. Got kicked out of there pretty promptly, but we were able to film in another auction safely undercover. But I mean, yeah, I've had arguments. Always, I try to always maintain a journalistic tone when possible, dealing with those types of individuals.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we're fortunate to have such a passionate community of advocates who share everything and send the letters and send 10 letters and or 20 or 100. And what I'm really hoping with the SAFE Act and the fact that this is something that should bring the equine community together is that we will get people from different walks of life, different sports, different breeds to stand with this because united we're obviously more powerful. And organizations that don't come from a standpoint of teamwork, I think, are only harming the issue. Teamwork is the only way that this is going to happen from people, from orgs, from the breeds. So, and we've received a pretty encouraging response from different. We have not yet released who is standing with us. We will be doing so very soon, but and we're still working on certain sports. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's powerful. And I think you're right that we need to all come together, people that care about horses and really, start being mature about these issues and trying to set emotions aside and see where we can find solutions and where we can help these horses.
Exactly. Yeah. And for the most part, that's happening, which is very encouraging and very beautiful.
And I love what you said about everybody's voice making a difference because when you look at the numbers that there's, probably 60,000 Mustangs in holding now, 20,000 horses being taken over the border for slaughter can feel insurmountable. What difference is it going to make if I take one horse into my home or whatnot? But I think as the voices spread, as people do what they can, for some people, it may be adopting a horse. For other people, it may just be simply sharing on social media, which I don't think people understand the full impact that even that can have to just bring awareness to someone who maybe hasn't heard about it before.
Exactly, because everybody's following is comprised of a great many people, right? Not just equestrians, but trying to just reach people to. And there's so much going on in our world today, obviously, and but to look at this for just a moment and do something good on behalf of these horses. And it's been amazing, some of the horses that we've rescued. And again, we're so small, but at the same time, I almost hate the fact that I like almost said that, because it's so impactful to rescue one or to rescue a handful or to rescue 50 of them, because they're individuals just like we are. And it's been incredible to see the journey of some of the most just abused horses that we've been able to personally adopt, and pairing. There's one particular horse and young woman that I'll cite. There was a horse that was extremely emaciated, and we got a call. She was in Texas, and we got a call from somebody that knew about our work, who had driven past a property where this horse was just tied. And I mean, when I say emaciated, she was skin and bones, this little buckskin. And I get this call from a stranger, and still don't understand how they got my personal number, but glad they did. And they described this horse, and I'm here in Los Angeles with my husband, and I get a photo, and it's just like, oh my God, what do we do? And so I got in touch with local law enforcement, and they ended up taking the horse away, and they allowed us to have the first right to figure out an adopter for the horse. And so we took her under our care, and we paired her with this young woman who had undergone some personal abuse and was a teenager. That the transformation and the photos from day one between those two, and this little girl, like her physicality was just so locked up. And the transformation, I don't know if that little girl would be around today without the help of that horse. And just a story of profound healing between two people that underwent abuse and found healing in each other. And that's the power of rescuing one life. So that's
Yeah.
why we can't lose hope. And I know it gets dark sometimes. And coming back from Texas this last trip, I mean, I didn't even want to talk to anybody for a week. It's just awful. But you have to keep going, because they need us. They need all of us. So, and we can all do our part.
Yeah. Well, I think if you need an idea for your next series, that would be a great one, is how horses are helping people like that. So when you get
Yeah.
bored,
Yeah, no, really. Well, as part of our campaign, and I wish we could tell every single story with our little crew, but we're trying to pick up a couple of like beautiful true stories
Mhm.
at different rescues and sanctuaries as we're able to, and to also tell those stories. And that's why we actually went to Riding the Spectrum on Monday. We were filming with Dermot Mulroney, who voiced our veterans spot, which came out yesterday. And he was in My Best Friend's Wedding and just a great many wonderful movies and television shows. And he has horses in his family, and he graciously narrated the spot. But because we had the crew for the day, like, what else can we fit in? And we ended up going to Riding the Spectrum and capturing that true story vignette. But something we're also doing is encouraging people, and we actually haven't announced this on social media yet, but we're asking record their own rescue stories, 60 seconds at the max, and they can do it horizontally, vertically, whatever they want to do. Just no foul language, positive stories, even if they're emotional or sad. but 60 seconds real stories, and to share them with us so that we can post them to social media, because every story matters, every life matters, every voice matters.
That's gonna be awesome. I'll
Thank
be looking for that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are there any other horses that you've encountered that have really just made a huge difference in your journey here and your desire to share about them?
Yeah, there sadly this horse passed away, but there was an amazing horse. Also 2020, we had just launched our nonprofit after deciding to rescue that first little gray filly, which turned out we ended up rescuing 13 horses that day, and that was our first rescue. And I remember my husband looking at me the next morning, and he turns around, he wakes up and he looks at me and turns and says, "Ashley, what did we do?" And it took a long time, and it was, to financially float 13 horses. I knew what we were getting into when we made the choice, given I've had horses in my life, and we knew what the costs were going to be, but it took 6 or 7 months to find adopters for all of those horses, and doing that slowly and thoughtfully. But around that time, I got an email about a horse that had advanced melanoma, and I was in the middle of writing a television series that I wish could get out of. It wasn't picked up by the studio, and now I don't own the rights to the story, and that's another tale in itself. But I'm trying
Sure.
to get them back because it's a beautiful story, horse TV series. So I'd written this TV series, and the horse who bonds with a little girl in this story, who's in tune with the greater wild world. She can speak to horses, they can speak to her. And I had come up with this story of a horse called Ghost, and it was a dapple gray stallion in the series idea. And after I wrote the series, this horse came into my life, and it was just bizarre. And before I even got a photo of him, I said to my husband, "It's Ghost, it's Ghost." And the story was, he is going to be a heartbreak. He has advanced melanoma, and we ended up adopting him, and he did very well until, unfortunately, this year. But he just he opened something up in me that had been just not closed, but it was just, horses had come back full force. But he was just, I know I'll never know a horse quite like that again. I dreamed of him before he arrived. It was just, again, we all have our different experiences with horses, but my connection with him was just uncanny. And he ended up coming into the life of one of my mentees, who he really transformed her life as well in the best possible ways. Just another, we all struggle with different things, and he was just very impactful for her. So, he marches on wherever that might be. And I think of him very often as we have wins and losses with our campaign work. And I think of him, and then I think of Old Man from the Anarchy, who's in our documentary, who I got to see once. He stepped out of he seemed to materialize the day that we finally saw him, and we got to film with him at sunset. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like I said earlier, I don't know how the universe works, but it feels like the horses are leading the way, and we have to keep going for them and everything that they've given us.
Absolutely beautiful stories. And for sure, they have a special place in our world today. And I really believe also that they deserve to be protected. And, the interesting thing is that a lot of times the most powerful stories happen with the horses that are rejected or broken or reactive, not the perfect little horses that fit so nicely into our world. But the ones that really have had to struggle, they can often be the most powerful for the people that eventually end up coming in contact with them. So, as we close, because we are low on time, what would you like to leave in closing as to what people can do, how they can support you in your campaign, and what the next step for the campaign and for anyone interested in becoming involved might be?
Sure. I think we have to remember that they cannot be forgotten. We can't leave the horses that have touched our lives in the shadows. We have to allow for them to, even if they can't stay in our lives, you have to find a soft landing. And for those who can take in a horse, please consider rescuing and adopting, and please support our work, share the work. The Lost Horses campaign is running from this fall until spring of 2026. We're going to be launching these vignettes every couple of weeks, sometimes coupled with an interview with the celebrity or a true story of a real rescue. Please share those. And, go to the website. In 90 seconds, you can send a letter to your representatives. It's pre-written. All you have to do is, it's losthorses.org. You can go to the Take Action page, put in your zip code, and it immediately propagates your reps. And a pre-written letter, we encourage you to alter it and put it in your own voice. But if you don't have the time or you don't want to, just hit send, and let's really flood our members of Congress from now until spring in a coordinated effort. And let's try to pass the SAFE Act. Not try, let's pass the SAFE Act. And our quote has been, so no horses lost again.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll include all the links for anyone who wants to get there quickly. If you're here on the podcast, you can quickly link up to that. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, for the work that you do. It is so powerful to pair storytelling with the visuals. And anyone who hasn't seen your work should definitely check it out because the visuals are really beautiful and also heartbreaking, but very powerful either way.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time today.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.